Hey Year 12s! In this video I'm going to walk you through what to do when you get a prompt for Whose Reality. If Whose Reality isn't your context, or you haven't yet watched our general video on the big ideas of this context, stop, go and watch that first and then come back. For those of you still left, this video is relevant to you regardless of what text you study or what type of piece you're writing. The process of identifying the key issues at play and deciding what to talk about is much the same between creative, persuasive and expository. The prompt we'll be looking at is from the 2014 VCE end-of-year exam. If you want to use this as a practice exam, you might want to stop watching now. Keep in mind that what I'm about to tell you isn't the correct answer, because no such thing exists. It's just a suggestion of how you could approach the topic. Alright, on to the prompt. Misrepresenting reality can have serious consequences. The first thing I'm going to try to do is work out what the prompt is asking. If you have a particularly complex prompt, this might mean rewriting it in a way that makes sense to you, but this one is pretty straightforward. Misrepresenting reality is discussing the idea of creating a false reality for oneself or others, including the reasons one might alter reality. Have serious consequences is obviously asking you to think about what the outcomes can be of changing reality in this way. It is important to realize at this stage that a high mark is dependent on dealing with all aspects of the prompt, not just one. That means looking at the point of intersection between those two topics and talking about it explicitly. Next, I'm going to start to draw out a plan for the different directions I might stretch this prompt in. How many you do and which you choose will depend on what writing style you're using, but a few possible ideas to consider expanding on with this prompt would be reasons why one might misrepresent reality for oneself, the inadequacies of life to meet expectations. Reasons why one might misrepresent reality for others, to persuade others of a false view of reality. How one can create a false reality, the ways we misrepresent reality. The consequences of sustaining a false reality. The consequences of having a false reality collapse. Note that not all of these points are directly answering the prompt or agreeing with it. You can absolutely put forward ideas that do not agree with the prompt. You can challenge it, or stretch it in a new direction, so long as you are still addressing the key concepts. Thirdly, I need to start thinking about how I'm going to apply these ideas to text and wider world examples. I will consider examples from the text that fit the prompt, such as characters who find themselves creating a false reality because the world around them is too harsh or unlike what they hoped for. Something you need to note here is that achieving a high mark with this prompt is not as simple as choosing one of those ideas we spoke about before and then looking at a few different examples. Your response needs to be more complex than that. You're better off structuring your paragraphs around the ideas and then finding different examples to fit, than choosing examples to start with and trying to make your big ideas seem somehow different when they really are the same. Finally, I'm going to draw this plan out on paper before I start writing. You probably want to ask me now, how much planning should I do before you start writing, am I right? Well, sorry, but I don't have a clear answer for you. It differs from person to person. I personally don't do a lot. I just jot down what the big idea and example is that's going to go in each paragraph, but this is because I'm normally pretty good at staying on track. If you struggle to stay on track, or your teacher has criticized your topic sentences for being a bit off topic before, that's an indication you need to write out a plan in a little more detail. Here's one way you could tackle this problem. Paragraph 1 might be, why and how one might alter the reality they're dealt into something that's more palatable. Using the example of Death of a Salesman, Willy Loman finds himself in a reality unlike what he expected or wanted, and lives in memories and fantasy as a way of avoiding it. Paragraph 2, the consequences that creating a false reality can have on the individual who loses touch. Using a wider world example, the dangers of ignoring problems in one's reality, perhaps domestic violence, for example. Paragraph 3, the consequences of creating a false reality for individuals other than oneself. Using the example of Wag the Dog, the criticism of American media and politics through the audience's knowledge that people are being misled. Once you have this plan down, you're ready to write. Sometimes this is the worst part. You know everything you're going to say, but somehow that first sentence just isn't coming. Be a bit strategic here. Just get something down onto the page, even if it's absolute rubbish, and come back to it later. My first sentence never looks right once I've written a bit more, but in finishing the essay, my writing becomes more fluid, and I'm able to rewrite it quite quickly at the end. Something I've left out of this whole plan is vocabulary brainstorming, because ideally, it's not something you want to do in SACS or the exam. That said, it's a great way to start a practice essay. Once you've looked at the prompt, underline the words that you think you're going to use too frequently in your work, and then brainstorm a list of alternatives. This is not as easy as checking synonyms, although that can help. It requires you actually think about what that word means in the context of the sentence. For example, synonyms will not generate deluding oneself as an alternative to misrepresenting reality, but it could be one within the context of your writing. I hope this has given you some confidence for approaching prompts. Help yourself out by reading widely and having a solid understanding of the big ideas that Whose Reality prompts relate to. Other than that, the first few pieces are inevitably the hardest, but it gets easier and easier the more you do. Don't just get something back from your teacher and put it away, try rewriting essays and handing them back in. This technique allows you to learn from mistakes much faster than you would otherwise. Thanks for watching, and make sure you check out our many other videos on Whose Reality and your specific texts. Happy writing!
Click here to go to the Engage Wiki. Click here to go to the next video. Or, if you really want, you could just stare at this motivational poster.